Mussolini's colonial vision was built around one central idea: recreating the Roman Empire. He talked about this constantly, using the term Mare Nostrum, our sea, to describe his goal of turning the entire Mediterranean into an Italian-dominated lake, just as it had been under ancient Rome. This wasn't just rhetoric for him, it shaped real military campaigns, occupation policies, and enormous human cost across multiple continents. Libya came first. Historically, Italy had already colonized Libya back in 1911, taking it from the Ottoman Empire. But by the time Mussolini rose to power in 1922, Italian control was shaky, especially in the eastern region of Cyrenaica, where resistance fighters kept fighting back for years. Mussolini decided to finish the job properly. He put General Rodolfo Graziani in charge of a pacification campaign that became extraordinarily brutal. Italian forces built concentration camps, deported entire populations, and used starvation and disease as weapons. Historians estimate tens of thousands of Libyans, possibly more, died during this period. Once pacified, Mussolini pushed a colonization program nicknamed the Fourth Shore, encouraging thousands of Italian farming families to settle in Libya, essentially trying to turn it into an extension of Italy itself. Ethiopia was the crown jewel of his ambitions. If there's one campaign that defines Mussolini's colonial project, it's Ethiopia. Back in 1896, Italy had suffered a humiliating defeat at the Battle of Adwa, where Ethiopian forces routed an invading Italian army. One of the few times in that era, an African nation successfully repelled European colonization. Mussolini saw this as a wound that needed avenging. In October 1935, he launched a full invasion of Ethiopia. The campaign was one-sided in terms of technology. Italy used tanks, aircraft, and notoriously chemical weapons, spraying mustard gas on Ethiopian soldiers and civilians alike. This violated international agreements Italy had actually signed on to, but Mussolini pursued it anyway. Ethiopia's capital fell in May 1936, and Mussolini triumphantly declared the birth of Italian East Africa, merging Ethiopia with Italy's older colonies of Eritrea and Italian Somaliland into one administrative bloc. King Victor Emmanuel III was proclaimed Emperor of Ethiopia, and Mussolini used the conquest as massive domestic propaganda, presenting himself as the man who restored Italian imperial glory. Eritrea and Italian Somaliland as supporting pieces. These two territories had actually been Italian colonies since the late 1800s, well before Mussolini's time. Under fascism, they took on new importance as staging grounds and logistical bases for the Ethiopian invasion, and afterward as administrative anchors for the whole East African empire Mussolini was building. Albania, invaded and annexed outright in April 1939, months before World War II even began, Italian forces invaded Albania, overthrew King Zog, and annexed the country. This gave Mussolini a direct foothold across the Adriatic Sea, which he intended to use as a launching pad for further expansion into the Balkans, Greece, and it went badly. In October 1940, Mussolini launched an invasion of Greece from Albania, largely because he was jealous and frustrated watching Hitler rack up victory after victory in Europe while Italy sat on the sidelines. He expected an easy win. Instead, Greek forces mounted a fierce defense and actually pushed the Italian army backward into Albanian territory, a genuine embarrassment for Mussolini. Germany eventually had to step in and invade Greece in 1941 to rescue the situation, which deepened Italy's dependency on Nazi Germany for the rest of the war, Yugoslavia and the wider Balkans. Following the joint German-Italian invasion of Yugoslavia in 1941, Italy carved out portions of Dalmatia along the Adriatic coast for direct annexation, while also establishing occupation zones and puppet administrations in Montenegro and parts of Slovenia. This fit Mussolini's broader ambition of dominating the Adriatic and Balkan region as an extension of Italian power. Tunisia, claimed but never fully seized, Tunisia was a French protectorate with a very large population of Italian expatriates, and Mussolini frequently made public claims that it rightfully belonged to Italy. Along with Corsica and Nice, he referred to these as terra irredente, or unredeemed lands, framing them as historically Italian territories that needed to be reclaimed. In practice, these claims stayed mostly at the level of propaganda and diplomatic pressure, rather than resulting in actual invasion, at least until France's collapse in 1940 opened the door to more aggressive posturing. Egypt and the fight for the Suez Canal, this was one of Mussolini's most consequential and ultimately disastrous ambitions. As part of dominating the Mediterranean, he launched an invasion of British-controlled Egypt from Libya in September 1940, aiming to capture the Suez Canal, which would have been a devastating blow to British global trade and military logistics. Italian forces made some initial advances but were quickly overwhelmed by British and Commonwealth troops. The failure was severe enough that Germany had to send reinforcements, leading to the deployment of Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps, which then became the dominant force in the North African campaign, again reducing Italy from a leading Axis partner to a dependent one. French territories more broadly when France fell to Germany in June 1940. Mussolini saw an opportunity to press his territorial claims more aggressively. He pushed for Italian control over Corsica, Nice, Savoy, and continued Tunisia, along with French Djibouti. However, Italy's military weakness meant that actual territorial gains from France were quite limited compared to what Mussolini publicly demanded. A wider Mediterranean and Middle Eastern dream, beyond the specific campaigns, Mussolini talked in grander terms about Italy dominating the entire Mediterranean basin, which included ambitions toward Malta, then a British colony strategically vital for controlling Mediterranean shipping lanes. He also spoke aspirationally about influence stretching into the old Roman provinces of the Middle East and North Africa, though these ambitions mostly remained rhetorical, constrained by Italy's actual military and economic capacity. The ideological engine behind all of it, what ties all of this together, is fascist ideology itself. Mussolini constantly invoked ancient Rome, positioning modern Italian expansion as not just strategically necessary but historically deserved, even civilizationally righteous. In practice, though, Italy's military and industrial capacity never matched the scale of these ambitions. Campaigns in Greece and North Africa exposed serious weaknesses, and by the early 1940s, Italy had shifted from being an equal Axis partner with Germany to essentially being propped up and directed by German forces, a far cry from the self-sufficient Roman-style